Hello friends and welcome to the Southern Mountain Kitchen. Today we're going to make biscuits and gravy. So to make buttermilk biscuits, what you see on my counter is all you're going to need. It's not really a lot to deal with, but you need some good buttermilk and actual butter to make these with. I'm using all-purpose flour and just a few things are going to be added to this. And you need a good biscuit cutter. But other than that, it's not really that bad. So we're going to handle the biscuits first and the gravy second. So we're going to take our butter, which I actually put mine in the refrigerator. I got this really cold before I did this. You could freeze it if you want to. And I'm just going to shred this because it's easier to work with when it's shredded. We're just going to go ahead and you're going to need a whole stick. So we're going to go ahead and just use this to go through and shred this into small pieces, because when you go to mix this into the flour, it's just going to be so much easier if it's shredded up. Now, some people would say, oh, you shredded it on the counter, you're going to handle it before you put it into your bowl. It doesn't really matter. It's that cold. It's going to be fine. And we're just going to keep shredding this up until we're completely done with it and we're ready to move this into our bowl. So as you can see, when you shred this up, it does come out to be quite a lot shredded, which is really cool because, you know, it's harder to work with a thicker stick of butter. So this just works perfectly to shred it up the way I did it there. And once we get into our bowl, we're going to add the other ingredients to actually make these biscuits. So once it's in, we are going to add to this a half a teaspoon of sugar, 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt, a half a teaspoon of baking soda, 1 tablespoon of baking powder. And then after this, we have 2 cups of all-purpose flour. That's what I use to do this. Now some people ask, can you use self-rising? Well, if you did use self-rising flour, you wouldn't need the baking powder in it. So now all of this is into our bowl, and we're going to use a fork or whatever you like to use to totally combine it together, and we're going to break that butter up because we really want the butter into small bits inside of this mix. So really it should be about the size of maybe like even a grain of rice or something. So go ahead and just mix it up, break it up, get this completely combined together, and just work it until it is completely mixed. We're not going to do this a lot to a point to where we're going to actually make that butter really warm or anything, but we just want to mix it through. So it really shouldn't take you but like a minute or two to do this. And then once we're done, we're going to add our buttermilk to this. Now I start out with a cup of buttermilk, because it's easier to start out with a cup and find out you don't have enough than to add a cup and a half and find out it was too much. So go ahead and add the cup in, mix it up some, and then we're going to add in a little at a time, like maybe, you know, like 1/8 of a cup or whatever, and just mix it in until this actually becomes like a ball, because we really don't want it to be too dry, but we also don't want it to be extremely wet, because if it's extremely wet, it's not going to bake up properly. So as you can see, I probably used a total of maybe 1 1/4 cups to do what I did here to get this completely combined together. And that's perfectly fine. That's what we wanted to do. So we're going to need some things. You're going to need something to bake this in. I use aluminum foil just because if I use a cake pan, I can pull this out without burning my fingers. It's easy enough if you have flaps on the side to pick it up. Non-stick cooking spray. And then you're going to need something to cut this with and some extra flour. So put your foil in your pan, push it around the edges, and if you leave a little on either side, it's so easy just to pull this out later when it's cooked, and that way it's a point where you don't have to burn your fingers to get up into this thing. You literally just pull the foil to the side, lift it up, and it's done. Spray it with your non-stick cooking spray, then put some flour on whatever surface you're going to roll these out onto. I suggest patting these by hand because it's so much easier than using like a rolling pin or something. You don't really want to do that. Just do it by hand. Get some flour on your hand, bring out some of your dough, put it onto the surface there, and just fold it over a few times, because I mean you could do this like maybe 5 times or so, 6 times, and it's going to create layers in your biscuits, but also it's going to make them a little bit more flakier, easier to deal with, better to eat. So just keep flipping them over a few times until you get to the point you want, and then we're going to press it out to where it's probably a little over 1/2 inch thick. It doesn't have to be totally thick. I make mine a little big because I like big biscuits. And just keep pressing it down until it's flat, and then you can use your cutter. Now, when you use your cutter to cut a biscuit, don't twist it. Just push it down. If you have to rock back and forth a little bit, that's fine. And then just pull the stuff away from it and pick up your biscuit. And we're going to do this until we cut them all. And you should be able to make about 8 biscuits out of this. Mind you, depending on how thick you make them, you might make more. But you could easily make 8 as big ones, or maybe 10 if not. And you'll need another pan to put some more into. So you just line them up side by side in here and make sure they're actually into this thing really well. And then we're going to bake them at 425 degrees for anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes until they're golden brown. And then once they come back from the oven, you're going to need some butter to put on top of this, because that's going to give it a really great like golden look to the top of it. It's going to taste really good to be on there. So 2 to 3 tablespoons of butter, melt it in the microwave. Watch when you melt it in the microwave, you don't want to splatter all over the place. And then brush it over the top. Now you can easily get one of these little brushes. They cost like $1.25, and it works so well so that way you can brush your butter on top of your biscuits or whatever else you're doing. These are great to have around the kitchen, even if you're making any kind of bread or whatever. So, and once we get these brushed on top, we're going to let them sit for maybe about 3-4 minutes. That way that butter soaks in really well. And then we're going to remove them from the pan and let them sit on their own until we're ready to use them. So, as I said before, we left that little flap of foil around the edge of it. That flap of foil is going to come in handy to us in just a minute. So once they're to a point we're ready to deal with them, we're going to peel that foil to the edge a little bit, because you know it sticks out some, and we're going to literally use those pieces to lift this up and out. It's that easy. And once you do this, voila, it's out and your pan is still clean. It's not covered in anything, and that's great. And then you just break these open and you're ready to go with them and use them for whatever you want to. So we're going to get ready to make gravy in a minute, which is really great because biscuits and gravy, it's amazing to have in the morning. So I tested my oil with a little bit of flour, and if you notice there was something already sizzling in it, because you want to make sure it's hot enough to do this. So you're going to have about 1/4 of a cup of oil, or you can use butter, and then we're going to use up to 1/4 of a cup of flour. But we're going to put it in stages. We're going to use about half of that just to get this started mixing. And then once we get to a point where it's mixing in a little bit, we're going to add the rest of it. And then we're going to stir this around, because as this is cooking, it's going to cook that flavor out that tastes like flour. So it's probably going to take a couple of minutes to do that, because you really want to get that out of there. And then we want it to start thickening up a little bit, and then we're going to start adding some milk to this. So keep stirring this around, get it going, and make sure that everything in there is broken up. There's no lumps, there's no thick pieces. And then we're going to add in some milk. Now, you can add about 1 cup to 1.5 cups of milk, maybe a little bit more if yours is like the consistency you want, but don't pour it all in at once. I would put in maybe like 1/4 of a cup to start with to 1/2 cup, and just work your way up until you get it to where you want it to be. And then we're going to cook this until it thickens. Now it should be thickening up on you as you're cooking it, because you're going to have your temperature up on like high heat to do this. And you just want to make sure that you keep stirring this the whole time, so everything keeps mixing and you don't get clumps and it doesn't all stick together in one large place. You just want to break that up and get it into the milk. And we're going to keep stirring it as it goes until it gets to a point where it's the consistency of a silky gravy. And if you do this right, it's just amazing. And you're going to add some seasoning to this eventually. That's going to be your choice as to how much of that you put in, because you're going to put in a little salt, a little pepper. It could be something where you're just basically using like 1/2 teaspoon of salt and 1/2 teaspoon of pepper. It's all in how much of that you want in there, because if you like it a little more salty, you can add more. If you don't, dial it back. Same thing with the pepper. If you don't want the pepper overpowering it, you don't have to put a lot of it in there. But the whole point is to put in whatever is what you would like it to taste like. And this is where you probably should taste it as you're mixing it. A lot of people cook food and they don't taste it while they're cooking. And I'm like, well, if you don't taste it, how do you know it's right? I mean, yeah, you can guess on how much you're putting in there, but sometimes it just doesn't turn out the way you think it's going to. So, as you can see with mine, I've already got the seasoning in it. Everything is in here. It's already mixed up, and it is ready to be served here in a few minutes, because this gravy is thickening up really nicely. And we already have our biscuits. So basically, if you wanted to make some bacon or something to put with this, or some eggs, you got a great meal going here. And this is what mine looked like, and this was really a treat to eat, and it's a great breakfast. I hope you liked this video, and if you did, please like and subscribe. And if you get a chance, check out the Southern Mountain Kitchen website, where you can get a free recipe, check out the cookbooks available from the Southern Mountain Kitchen, and if you'd like to, you could order a cookbook at a discounted price, cheaper than Amazon, with shipping that is also cheaper than Amazon. So if you get a chance, check it out, and I hope you have a great day.